T-square, the scale. Tools of the architecture and interior design industry. But tools don't make good ideas or good design. Good design comes from in here, and what's in here. Over the years of Homeworks and Lynette Jennings' Home, we've showed you how to use your imagination. We've given you lots of ideas to work with. That's what's up here. We've also showed you how to see, how to be inspired by the world around you, how to draw color inspiration from nature, how to walk into a beautifully dressed room and tear it apart visually. See what it is that actually makes that room work. Then take those ideas home and use them in your own rooms. We've also, I hope, given you the confidence, what's in here, to make those ideas work. But that's where a lot of you have trouble. So what we've done is we've made a video. We've taken all the best segments out of Homeworks and Lynette Jennings' Home that give you those fail-safe, foolproof design basics with which you can work to make your ideas happen in your own rooms. Watch. I'm just doing a color scheme here based on some fabric we're going to use for someone's sofa. This is a good opportunity to explain to you how to do a color scheme for your living room based on the fabric that's in your sofa. And here's how you do it. It's really quite simple and it's absolutely foolproof. Take your fabric or your sofa cushion and just look at it for a minute. Now try and identify the three most dominant colors in that fabric. If you're having trouble doing this, take the sofa cushion off the sofa and go lean it against the wall, a wall that's far away. Step back about 12, 20 paces. And then I want you to look at the fabric, but scrunch up your eyes. You know how you blur your eyes a little bit so you can't really see the outline of what you're looking at, but you see color. Now, what are the three colors that really knock your eyes out? What colors do you see first that are most dominant? Now, whatever they are, those are the colors that you're going to build your color scheme around, because those are the dominant colors in your fabric. Now, you can straighten out your eyes now. Go put your sofa cushion back on your sofa, and then write down those colors. Or better yet, take the sofa cushion to the paint store. Take the whole sofa to the paint store if you have to. But the idea is that you want to match the colors in there, those three most dominant colors, with a paint chip. And then I'll tell you what to do next. Now here, I have a salmon that's very dominant, a rose that's dominant, and a green that's dominant. So I've found colors that go with the rose, the salmon, and the green that exactly match the color, for instance, the deepest color in your fabric. Now there's the dark, dark rose that goes with the dark rose in that fabric. And then I have the green as well. There's the green. And then I have the orange version, or the peach, as well. Now look at all the colors I have to work with. Now what you do is, if that color of burgundy is a little too dark for your walls, and that would be pretty tough to live with, then go up the ladder to a paler version of that same color and maybe put that on the wall. The idea is that each of the three colors works on a different surface. One of the three dominant colors, or one of the versions of that color, would go on your floor. Another version of one of the other colors would go on the wall. Maybe another would be on the side chairs or accompanying little chairs. And then maybe paler or darker versions of that same trio of colors would become the accents in your room. When you play around like that, you've got all sorts of variations. You wind up with a color scheme that's totally coordinated based on the original fabric. It's absolutely foolproof. One of the most confusing elements of design and decorating for most people is furniture arrangement. Ring any bells? Well, when I think about it, why is it so confusing? I mean, if you move your furniture around enough, sooner or later it's going to land in the right spot, right? Well, not always. Think about when your friends and your relatives come in through your front door. Do they walk right past your living room and make a beeline for the kitchen and the den in the back? I'll bet they do. And why? Because maybe it's decorated back there in warmer, cozier colors? Maybe they know there's beer in the fridge? Who knows? The point is that they're walking right past the living room because it's not inviting. There's something wrong there. Think about the last time you had a big party. Everybody stayed late, they went home, you're too tired to look at the mess, so you crash. You get up the next morning with clear eyes and you look at your living room and look at the way the furniture's been rearranged. I mean, it's all over the place. But why? Because they couldn't carry on a conversation sitting in the way you had it placed. Now that's what this living room is all about. A conversational cluster is an imaginary square of about 12 by 12 to 14 by 14 feet. Your furniture comes into that square. Then that square is oriented to a focal point. Now in this case, the fireplace is the focal point. Now why 12 by 12 or 14 by 14? Well, that's because if you move your seated furniture into that square, you can carry on a conversation with someone opposite without yelling. Because that's what you have to do when your furniture lines the room, is that you have to yell, and that's impolite. It feels uncomfortable. So there's your conversational cluster. Now if you have love seats, 2 love seats, that's fine. You could have a sofa and a sofa, a love seat sofa, an L-shaped sofa and a chair. Any combination will work as long as you keep it within that 12 by 12 foot area. Now once that's done, you also have to make sure that your furniture is oriented so it's inviting, and this is what I mean. If I carry on a conversation here, if I sit in this chair, and I want to talk to that fellow, that's just terrific. But if I want to talk to this guy, I've got to turn my head this way, and that's kind of uncomfortable. You get a stiff neck. So what you'll do instead is you'll sit side saddle so that you're comfortable. It's not the most graceful position, and certainly the chair wasn't designed to be sat in that way. So what you want to do instead, and again, this gets back to making the living room more inviting, kick the furniture a little sideways, a little catty corner like that. That way, it looks inviting. It's a lot more comfortable to sit, and I can carry on a friendly conversation with that person or that guy in the other chair. Now, your next question is, okay, if I do that, that's terrific, but what do I do with the rest of the space in the living room? Well, be creative. Now you've got the luxury of space you didn't have before, and that's kind of neat. Over here, we don't have a lot of space, so there's enough room for a side server, a couple of mirrors, a few accessories, and that's about it. Now what else could you put in there? Well, you could put a piano there, a writing desk, a wall unit, an entertainment center, or nothing. Just a picture and a plant would be gorgeous. On the other side of the room, I've got a little bit more space. This time it's a bay window. I've got enough space to put in a couple more chairs and have a little reading center. Maybe it's a wing chair and a bench or a little writing table. It's a nice private little corner. This is what we mean by a conversational cluster. Rearrange your furniture tonight. Have a party tomorrow. There's the one I want. That's it. You know, for a lot of you, choosing a color scheme, well, it's got to be the toughest thing to do in decorating, and yet it's really not. It's easy. You just got to know how. The idea is that when you choose color, you don't choose colors out of your head. A designer never does that. Colors don't come out of midair. They don't come out of their dreams. Colors are inspired by something we see. Now, this is my inspiration, this piece of fabric. Now this fabric probably is going to wind up on the sofa, it's chintz, that's going to be in the living room. So I'm going to use this to develop my color scheme. For you, it might be a piece of fabric on a sofa. It might be a cushion. It might be a cushion that's in another room of the house. It could be your husband's tie, the pattern in it. It could be your favorite blouse. It could be a picture that you're eventually going to hang over the sofa and frame there. The point is that you find your color inspiration anywhere. You find a group of colors that you like the way they go together, they feel good. And that's an important word because your color scheme throughout your whole house has to feel good. Now you take that inspiration, you analyze all the colors in it, you break them down, and you develop a color scheme for the whole house. Now the question you might be asking yourself is, okay, if you do that, what keeps the whole house from looking the same and being boring? Well, there's a way to do that, and I'm going to show you how. Now for those of you who've moved into brand new houses, newly constructed houses, you're probably living with builder beige walls and probably builder beige carpet or something else equally neutral. You had to choose it on the spot, you had to make a snap decision, you don't have any of your furniture, so you just went for something that's, will go with everything. Well now the day has come when you have to choose the everything that it's supposed to go with. Now you might be in trouble unless you do your homework, and I'll show you how it's done. First, you're going to make a chart just like this, just using the letters of the alphabet, like this. Now, each of those letters corresponds to a color in your inspiration piece, because before you do that, you've been to the paint store and you've picked up a paint card for each one of the colors in your fabric. Now, you identify the color to a color in the paint card, and it's really nice when you have a paint card like this that shows from light to dark all the variations of that color, because you're going to work with those. Now that I've done that, I'm going to take each one of these paint cards and assign them. Now, I've pre-stuck these. I've put a little tape on the back of it to make it really simple. I'm going to assign each one of these to a letter. The idea is that once you've charted your colors, you're going to take the same colors by letter and make a chart across the top. So it's A, B, C, E, F, G, H. We have 8 colors. And now you list down the side the rooms in your house. You've got your living room, we'll abbreviate and call it LR, the dining room, a hall, because it's a room, a kitchen. Maybe you've got a den in the back or a family room. Now you're going to go upstairs, stair area. You've got an upper hall and bedroom, 1, 2, 3, and a bathroom. Now the idea is when you get your color scheme going is that you pull color A becomes your dominant color in the living room. Color B becomes the secondary color in your living room. We're going to make a tiny little B. Color C might be an accent color in your living room. In your dining room now, color B comes down and it becomes maybe the dominant color in your living room. Color C becomes the second most dominant, and now A, baby A, becomes the accent color. Now in the hallway, you may pull down another color. D may be dominant, but C may be your middle color and A still the accent. In the kitchen, the F may come down and be your dominant color. B becomes the accent color. A becomes the secondary color. See what I'm doing? So what happens is all these colors are being used, but as you pull them down into the other areas of the house, they change position between the main theme color, the accent colors, and the second main theme color. Now what I'm going to do is create a little floor plan. Actually, it's a diagrammatic floor plan, and show you how this actually works throughout the house. Here's the foyer. Coming off the foyer somewhere is your living room, right? This is the living room. Somewhere off the living room is your dining room. Coming out of the foyer will be a long hallway. Doesn't have to be straight and square, just draw a little diagram like this. Coming off the hallway, somewhere might be the kitchen, and off that maybe a den or a family room or something toward the back of the house. Now you're going to walk up a bunch of stairs, and you're going to get upstairs to a larger hallway. This is your upper area. And then off that hallway is bedroom 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, and a bathroom. Now, does that look like your house? Probably not. Okay, what we're going to do now is take these color pieces that we've broken up and assign them to the rooms. Now, let's say this first color is the dominant color in the living room. This might be the beige carpet. There's your dominant color. Now, the chintz that I was working with had a beautiful rose in it. So let's take a shade of the rose card and put that with that. That's A color, B color. And now let's bring in a paler shade of that same beige. Okay, there's color C, there's the accent color. Now watch what happens to this secondary color as it moves into the dining room. Okay, let's use a darker version of that, and we're going to have a really dramatic dining room. It's going to be gorgeous. Because you're using light and dark shades of the same color, don't worry about the fact that this goes with this, because it will. Automatic. Now let's choose another color for an accent, or it could be the secondary color with the raspberry. And now for an accent, we'll put a pale blue. There. And we'll just stick that one on there like that. All right. Now, this color, these colors all relate to another area of the house. So I take another shade of the same blue. Maybe this time it becomes a Wedgwood. Put that there. And now, kind of a creamy yellow. Yeah. Of a pale yellow moves into there. And we need an accent, maybe a paler blue. There's 2 blues in that fabric. There's one. Don't worry about the 2 blues going together. They work because they're in the fabric. Now you see what's happening? It's the same color scheme. They all relate, and it's going to move up into the other areas of the house. Choosing a color scheme for your house does not start in the brain. It doesn't start in the paint store. It starts at your kitchen table with a chart, a pair of scissors, and a bunch of paint chips. Do you remember the last time you went shopping for wallpaper? I'll bet you came home with a headache instead of wallpaper, right? Well, I was there. I saw you sitting down for hours looking at every page in every book in the store. Well, no wonder you didn't come home with anything. If a designer shop for wallpaper like that, we'd never get our work done. No one's ever taught you how to do it. That's what I'm here for. The first thing you're going to do is make some decisions at home at your kitchen table, not in the store. And the first decision you're going to make is, what kind of style are you looking for? Are you traditional? Are you contemporary or oriental or whatever? Now that's pretty easy. Everybody can kind of figure that out. Write it down though, because you need a control card when you get to the store. Then you're going to decide on the kind of picture you want to look at, because after all, that's what you're doing, is you're putting pictures on your walls. Now the picture might be as subtle as a texture, but it's still a picture. Are you comfortable with little fishermen walking over a bridge this big? Eggplants this big? Or maybe you just want stripes. Maybe you want geometrics. You can't live with flowers. That's not your thing. Make that decision, because when you get to the store, it's easy to become distracted. Write it down. The next thing, I want you to wander into the room where you're looking for the wallpaper. Now, if it's the living room, then take a piece of fabric from your sofa or a cushion from your sofa if you have one, or you can carry it to the store, because you need a color reference. You can't remember color. Don't trust yourself. Even the best designers in the world can't trust their minds to remember perfect color, and that's what you want. So take a fabric or a sample or a cushion to the store. Here's my fabric. I brought this piece along with me. That's my color reference. That's the fabric on my sofa. Now I want to find a wallpaper that goes with it. I know what style I want, and I know I want stripes. And I've told this to the person into the store. That way they can help you. They'll get rid of all the other books that don't meet those categories. Now when you look through the books, don't look through every single page looking for what you're after. You'll never find it that way, and not only that, you will wind up with a headache. It's too many choices, too many colors. You get bleary-eyed after a while. This one, oops, this is contemporary. Got the wrong book here. Let's try this one now. Hey, now we're getting there. Here's a little trick I learned a long time ago. If I look at every page, I do get bleary-eyed. What I do is I pick up the corner and I flip through it this way. I don't even look at the pattern. I'm only looking at the colors they used in the book. Because what you might not realize is that the wallpaper manufacturers will gang a bunch of patterns together in a book that are pretty much designed by the same group of designers with the same color palette, the same paints, the same inks. So guess what? No matter whether it's a stripe or floral, if the colors don't work in that book with the fabric you've got, pass. Because even looking at all the different pages isn't going to make it work. But these colors do work. So now I'm going to start looking at the papers. Now don't dwell, sort of out of the corner of your eye, look at the florals. Don't dwell on them, because again, you're going to get confused. And you'll get inspired, but you're going to wind up buying something that you're not happy with. Now I'm looking for stripes. Let's see what we can find here. Ah, here's one. Here's a beautiful gold, a little dark, but it works with the fabric. Here you can see this. See how that works? Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to make that instant decision. I'm going to bend this back, and then I'm going to see what else there is in here. Never know. Now that's not a stripe, but I think I could live with it. It's a nice little geometric, so I'm going to flip that back. Let's see if we can find something that maybe a little more contemporary, because that print is more contemporary than it is traditional. There's a pretty blue. How's that? That's kind of interesting. Okay, now, this isn't where you stop. There's another decision you have to make. And this is how you do it. Let's take the book over here, up against the wall. Now, scale is a very important part of this whole decision-making process. If you were going to hang that stripe in a powder room, about 6 inches away from your nose, that stripe is going to be quite large, quite bright, and quite a lot of punch, a lot of personality. On the other hand, if you were to hang the stripe in a living room about 20 feet away, well, that stripe might become quite narrow, the colors diminish, it would be very subdued, a very soft illusion, a completely different look for the same paper. Now, if you have any doubt at all, borrow the book for 24 hours, take it home, and prop it up in the room where the wallpaper is going to hang. Follow those 4 steps, and next time you shop for wallpaper, you'll walk out of the store with a roll under your arm, a smile on your face, and this time, no headache. There! I'm going to teach you how to hang pictures. Now, you're probably thinking, what's so difficult about hanging a picture? Well, there must be something wrong, because a lot of you do it wrong. Your pictures are often too high. Yep. Now think about it this way. How did the artist paint the picture? Because however he painted it is how he wants you to see what he was seeing. So you should picture yourself being the artist with your nose to the middle of the picture. An artist didn't paint it up here, and he probably didn't paint it way down there. He painted it on an easel sort of right straight in front of him. So think of it that way. And the best way to remember is nose to the middle of the picture. Now you're probably thinking, okay, my husband's 6'4", I'm 4'6", whose nose? Well, take an average height. There you get the idea. Now the other thing that you want to remember is where to hang a picture. Now I've drawn a couple of living rooms here that don't have any pictures in them. Now look at the first one. Now let's say you have only one picture. That's all you can afford. Just one nicely framed picture. And it's probably a landscape type picture, which means it's a horizontal rectangle. And it's about like that. Or it could be not even that big. And it's probably up here, right? So let's say there's your picture. First of all, it's too high. Secondly, it looks lost in that great big wall. There's nothing it relates to. You know how to hang a picture that isn't big enough to fill a wall over a sofa? Here's how you do it. Look down here. You're going to hang that picture over here, low, and next to the light, off-centered to the sofa. Now you can look at that and say, no, wait a minute, that's lopsided. No, it isn't. There's something strange. It's something that happens in the mind. When you offside a picture, this picture then becomes part of the composition with the light, the top of the sofa, and back to the picture again. So what you created here is an artistic composition. Now that area is very full, it's very composed, it's very tight, but the rest of the wall is quite empty. Well, that's okay. Don't let that bother you. At first it might bother you because you're not used to seeing it that way. But the fact that this is so full will compensate for the rest of the wall being very tight. Now, what happens if you have a couple of pictures? You have actually a grouping. Well, you don't want something like this, which is sort of mama, papa, baby bear. And you don't want one in the center and one on each side. Like, that's okay, but that's very formal. So if you have a collection of 3 pictures, here's how I would do it. Again, I would off-center them. I might have one here, one up above, and one down low. Again, you're creating a composition that offsets everything else that works in the room, leaving the rest of the wall open. Now let's say you don't have 2 end tables, maybe you don't have a lamp, or maybe they're not symmetrical as these are. What would you do if you just had a sofa and maybe not much else? Let's say you only had 1 end table. Okay, we'll draw the end table in on this side, and it doesn't matter where it is. Okay, there's the end table. What would you do on the other side of the sofa? Well, I would put a plant in there. There's the plant. Best looking plant I've grown in a long time. And here's the picture. Again, tucked a little offside and more into the plant. Let the plant's branches sort of gracefully surround the picture or soften the edge of the picture. Always think of composition. This is what we're talking about. It's an artistic word, but what it really means is grouping shapes rather than trying to center one picture over the sofa. Now, you have to do your homework. You can go to the variety store after the show's over and pick up a few hooks, get out a hammer, rehang your pictures. A little out of Africa? Sure, I'll take it, especially if Robert Redford was around the corner. You know, you've heard me talk a million times about beating the boring beige blahs. Well, in this case, I'll let you get away with it because beige here is certainly not boring. It's very interesting. Now, granted, there's a beige carpet and there's beige on the walls, but take a look at that wall, speaking of walls. It's full of color. All those artifacts, all those crafts that probably somebody picked up from a holiday trip are full of colors. Now that's how you beat the boring beige blahs, is with color, and it's not bright color, because you'll notice the colors on that collection on that wall are all muted. Every color of the rainbow is represented, but they're all sort of dusted down or grayed down or very rich, earthy, almost naturally dyed colors. And that's what's important. That's how you pick up the beige blahs. Now this whole theme was done in sort of an African, handcrafted, Peruvian, boy, there's a little bit here from every place in the world. But notice that it is all handcrafted, which means it's got a great deal of texture as well as color. And that's how you give a room like this a very earthy, warm, comfortable environment. Now take a look at this sofa. Ordinarily, you'd see that fabric in a fabric store, and you'd say, well, gee, that's very contemporary. It's purple, and it's taupe, and it's mauve. Now, what does that have to do with beige and earthen colors? Well, a lot, because when you look at it carefully, it's got a great deal of texture, and that's what brings it in or pulls it into this room. And because it's textured, it looks handcrafted or hand-woven. Now, take a look at the fabric on this pillow. Ordinarily, again, you'd see it in a fabric store and you'd say, well, that's very contemporary. That goes with something that's very black lacquered and burgundy and very slick. Well, not necessarily, because when you look at the colors, they're all muted. They're very rich colors. There's turquoise and burgundy and sort of even a wedgewood or robin's egg blue and a lot of gold. But what makes it earthy is the fact that there's a random pattern, and the gold is sort of all over the place, and the gold is sort of an antiqued gold or burnished gold. So if you have a fabric like this, or you can find a fabric like this, use it, because it adds a little bit of glamour. It sort of updates a very handcrafted kind of look. And then look at this pillow. Well, that's fuchsia, boy is it ever. But it's a toned down, almost an Eastern kind of fuchsia, something you'd find in a Persian costume, for instance. It's very rich and it looks sort of nubbly. It looks elegant. So you've taken a very natural, warm environment and turned it into something that's elegant. As far as the furniture arrangement is concerned, well, it's a sectional sofa, which again is very contemporary, but it doesn't mean you have to have a very rigid kind of arrangement. In fact, look at what has become a coffee table. These are cushions, extra cushions for guests, but stacked up and they're rigid foam, they make a coffee table. All you have to do is accessorize them like you would an ordinary coffee table, and then if you're going to serve drinks or coffee cups that you're worried about tipping, just put a tray there instead and put your coffee cups and your glasses on top of that. This is a warm feeling, and it's so easy to decorate this way. All you need to do is pick up anything that's sort of naturally handcrafted when you travel or when you go on holidays, collect it all in one room, and boy, you've got an instant environment. In fact, hey guys, why don't we go on safari? We could take Homeworks over maybe and decorate a tent? I tried. One of the most often asked decorating questions is, well, I've just started my first house. Where do I begin? I haven't got any money. Or, gee, Lynette, it's really time to redecorate and I don't know where to begin. I've got a little bit of stuff I want to keep, some things I don't want to keep. Where do I make my decisions? Where do I start? I haven't got a lot of money. Well, everyone seems to be in the same boat. I think the problem is that decorating is really a series of decisions based on priorities. Got that? It's kind of a profound thing to say. Lots of decisions. Of course, everything you buy is a specific decision. But the priority part is what's most important because a lot of people get it backwards. Here's how you decorate. Here's how you make those decisions and in what order. First thing is don't do the windows first. That's what most people do. They buy a new house or an old house, or you start redecorating a room, and you go into that room, and the first thing you do is do the window treatment. And you know what happens? You wind up with galloons of lace and bundles of fabric all over the windows, and then you race around for the rest of your life trying to find a sofa that's going to go with the fabric that you've chosen for the windows. You never find it. So what happens is you get yourself into a corner you can't get yourself out of. Not only that, but the windows tend to overpower the room because that's where you put all your money. That's what you did first. The other thing a lot of people do is they do their powder room or bathroom first. Because, well, gee, you know, I can go around the corner on Saturday and buy a couple rolls of wallpaper and at least I've made a start. But what happens is your whole color scheme then gets built around the wallpaper and the powder room. I think we got things backwards. So the first thing you want to remember is don't do the windows first. The second thing is your flooring is the most important decision you have to make because unless your floors are going to be chopped up with all kinds of different materials all over the house, which is not what you want to do, your flooring should be somewhat consistent, which means it's either consistent in material, meaning carpet throughout, or hardwood throughout, or tile throughout, or it's at least consistent in color, if not texture. So maybe you have, let's say, a soft green carpet in the living room and dining room, but in the foyer you might have a soft green tile or soft green linoleum. So you see the carpet and the tile are two different materials, but the colors are synonymous, and they do somewhat blend. So your flooring is a big decision. That is what's going to set the basis of your color scheme throughout the house. The next thing you're going to do is a floor plan. That's right, because there's no point in buying a sofa until you know exactly what size, shape, configuration of sofa you want, or dining table or dining suite. If you go out and buy a dining suite because it's on sale and because a salesman tells you, hey, you get a better deal if you buy all the pieces at once, you get it home and you wind up finding that you're squeezing all this furniture into much too small a space. So a floor plan to scale, little graph paper on the kitchen table, is what you need to do next. So floor plan, really important. Then you get to the furniture part. Now there's an order of purchase that varies with opinions of designers. Some prefer that you buy your sofa first. Others prefer that you buy your case goods. That's all the hard stuff, the wooden furniture first. Others, well, everyone seems to have a varying opinion. But for me, I'd rather buy the bed first. Even if it's just a box spring and mattress because you bought such a good quality one, you can't afford the rest of the bedroom suite, it doesn't matter. If you don't get a good night's sleep, in my book, you can't make good decisions about the rest of the stuff. So your bed, your mattress and box spring, buy the best quality you can afford. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff later. So that's really important. So I'm going to put that one as number one in my book. Number two is table and chairs. Because after you've had a good night's sleep, got to get a good breakfast. And you got to have some place to sit. And sitting on the floor is kind of fun for a while, but that's not cool for the rest of your life. So you want to make sure that you've got a good table and chairs that's comfortable right there. Number three then, you've got the two basics out of the way, is start with the decoration and the sofa. Now the reason you start with the sofa, well, it's logical. First, it's one of the most expensive things that you have to buy. And secondly, it's the largest piece of upholstered, color-dictating furniture in the house. That sofa, if it's, let's say it's a flowered fabric or in any kind of pattern fabric for that matter, it's the piece that has the most colors in it, and usually that's where the decorating starts. All your color scheme can be built around the fabric in the sofa and then scattered out throughout the rest of the house as you go from living room to dining room to all the other rooms. Now what happens with all the case goods, the tables, the armoires, the buffet and hutch, all the other things that you buy and put into a house? Well, after that comes all the wood furniture, but it doesn't all have to match. So that means you can buy little pieces one at a time. Some are antiques, some may be brass and glass, some might be the odd curio cabinet you buy on sale. What's really nice in the way the professionals do it is to buy pieces of furniture that don't match. That's what gives your house the personality. That's what makes your house you. To buy all of this and to make all these decisions at once, very foolish thing to do because, first of all, well, you probably don't have enough money to do it all at once. Most people don't. And even if you did, it's better if you take a longer period of time because you can make your decisions, well, with a little better advice, a little more research, more information. It also means that you're more comfortable with the decision you make because you've taken a little while to live in that house and live with what you've already got in order to decide what you need in the future. So when you start a decorating project, the first thing you're going to do is slow down, make sure you do it, plan it, make sure you do it slowly, one piece at a time, get your decisions in the right order, create your priority list, and then go from there. There, what do you think? How do you like my little fake window? This is a wonderful demonstration board. Now I don't want you to look at the drapery rod because it's not finished, and actually we're using nails behind here, but what I'm going to do is demonstrate how the new swags look. You know, there's the old swag curtain where your swag pulls to the side and it kind of hitches up here. The new swag is called a bishop swag, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. What we want to do here is create a lot of fullness. What happens in many cases is when you hang a simple curtain like this, it just hangs straight, looks like a limp dish rag. And that's not what you want. What you want is something that looks very full. Now that doesn't mean stuffing tissue paper in there either, because I know some of you are doing that. So what we want to do is create some fullness, but also make sure that the swag is in the right spot according to the architecture of the window. When you swag any kind of curtain, don't just pick sort of any spot on the wall and pull the curtain back. What we want to do is look at the breaks in the window. Say you have mutton bars, the little crossbars in your window. You've got the top of a double hung window. You have the sill area here. So what we want to do is pick one of those points and then swag the curtain into that position. Now I've got this one already hooked, and I have a nail in position on the first one. So there's the first swag. It's hooked so that it has some relationship there to the crossbar of the window. Now I can pull this down and hang it in on this one so that it hangs even lower, and that gives the window a longer look. If you hang it really low and swing it right at the sill level, you've got a really long, graceful feeling. You could even hike it up real high and have that first poof up here, and it makes it look really high-waisted, as you see in some of the fashion. Now let's say that you're going to hang the curtain down this low. You want it nice and full, so just fluff it out. And then what do you do with all the rest of this on the ground? Well, gone are the days where curtains just match the height of the carpet. What you want to do is have it sort of flounce. Almost, you can billow it, you can pull it, just like this. Sort of have it puddled at the bottom. Cats love it. Or you can just have it break slightly on the carpet like a men's trouser would break on the top of his shoes. It gives you a very languid, kind of elegant, lazy look about your fabric. And then you have a well-proportioned window. Believe it or not, that's a window. Today we're going to talk about accessorizing. Particularly, we're going to talk about accessorizing a fireplace mantle. Now, there are two methods to accessorizing a room. One is to keep it very formal, and that means symmetrical. And the other is asymmetrical or informal, more casual. First, I'm going to demonstrate, though, how to accessorize a mantle wall with a formal arrangement. Now, this is a fireplace, and these are the two windows. Some walls do have windows just astride the fireplace. So what we're going to do is start with something centered over the fireplace. Let's say you've got a picture. All right, there's your picture, such as it is. I hope your picture is more square than that one is. The next thing you're going to do if you want a symmetrical arrangement is flank it with a pair of something. Now, it could be vases, it could be candlesticks, or it could be, well, actually anything that matches. So let's draw in, let's say this is a candlestick, one on either side. Now, the next thing you're going to draw in is probably, let's say it's a matching pair of Chinese urns of some sort. Well, there's a little Chinese urn. Okay, and there's one on this side. Now, are we going to stop right here on either side of the fireplace? Well, maybe not, because we've got two symmetrically placed windows as well. How far do you take the symmetry? Well, it's wherever it's comfortable. That's where you stop. I would probably, if this were my house, I would put a potted plant here and one here. I want to make sure they're the same size. That's about right. And I would put a plant here and a plant here. I like the idea of having the greenery come up between the fireplace mantle and the window. It kind of softens this composition. Now look at what I'm doing here in terms of composition. Never have something that is this high, then this high, then this high, and then this high, and this high, and this high. You see what's happening is I'm creating a triangle. It goes up, it comes back down the other side, looks like a Christmas tree, or it could wind up looking like an altar if you're not careful. What you want is something that has a wave kind of composition. In other words, I would take a line and I would say up around the window, down around the tree, down, up, around, like this. So you get an undulating wave. That gives you a nice sense of composition, and yet you keep the formality of having things symmetrically placed. Now, how far do you take this? Well, you might say, well, we'll draw in a chair. Right here. This box represents a chair. Okay? You might have two wing chairs facing each other also on either side of that fireplace. That's about as far as I would take the symmetry. I wouldn't carry it any further into the room because you're going to wind up with something that looks very staged. That will establish a formal theme in a living room. Now let's take this fireplace arrangement down here. I'll draw in those same windows and I'll show you what an asymmetrical arrangement looks like. There's the windows. Now you might start with that same picture. Now here I might have a very large vase. It does look something like that. Then I might have a small grouping of boxes. On that side, I might have a large bush in a pot here, and I might have, let's say, a long table right under that window, or not even quite under the window. I would have it sitting just a little slight of the window and tucked in closer to the fireplace. Then I might have, we'll draw another box for a chair on this side, and maybe a smaller style chair here that's got more of a frame back on this side. You see, I've got symmetrical, I started with symmetrical architecture, but what I wind up with is something that is asymmetrical in form and a lot more casual. Now, when you walk around your room and decide how you're going to accessorize your living rooms in particular, because you tend to have more things in a living room than probably any other room in the house, take a look at each wall as if it were a snapshot. Draw yourself a little diagram. You don't have to be an artist. You can sure see that I'm not. Now I'd like to show you a room that's done almost exactly as I've sketched it in real life. Look familiar? Sure, but I didn't draw all those accessories. Look at the mirror, the two pictures on either side, and the two blue vases. You see the arrangement? Now here's the wave. There's one half of the arrangement, starting with the window, drops down to the blue vase, up and over that funny little urn, and then down to those plates. Now you'll see that, well, it's not Mama, Papa, Baby Bear like I described. That's what you don't want. But it's a lovely collection combining form, shape, placement, and texture. It works. Now in this corner arrangement, you'll see symmetry in the chairs, but the wall groupings are not symmetrical. This grouping is asymmetrical, whereas it's balanced with a symmetrical arrangement of 4 on the other wall. Symmetry even works on a sofa table. Hey, try it. You have an L-shaped living room and dining room. You have a rectangular living room and dining room. Either way, it's one large, big, open space. You might have an archway. Could be a narrow archway or a wide archway. But you still have the configuration of that long wall, and it seems to send everybody into a tizzy. What do you do with this enormously long wall and what usually is a fairly narrow space? Well, there are a couple things you can do, but I'm going to show you one solution I think that's been beautifully done in this room. Now, when you have this long wall, you can treat it as 2 separate rooms only if your archway is very tight and closed, which means you've got a fair bit of wall on either side of the arch. That means it's really 2 separate rooms. But if you have a situation where the archway is really wide open and you only have a little bit of wall sticking out from that long main wall, you don't really have enough there to treat the rooms separately. Put wallpaper in one room, for instance, or another wallpaper in the other room. Visually, they do connect. So you have to treat that long wall as one big space. Now, how you do it is really up to you, but this is a really interesting approach. Now, take a look at this long wall here. You start with a fireplace in the center. That says living room. That, in a way, defines this initial space. And then what they've done is flank the fireplace with bookcases. Now, up to there, it's not really unusual. It's beautifully done, it's comfortable, it's warm, it certainly stores a lot of stuff. But look at the way they've connected this room to the dining room beyond through the archway, almost as if it isn't even there, and then into what becomes a lower area that is really a buffet. In fact, the buffet starts from the arch wall all the way through to the wall at the end of the room and encloses at the far end a rad. So now that wall is nice and clean and it's unified, but it does serve 2 different functions. And what does that is the fact that the built-ins have all been styled to be similar. They're all white, they're the same molding style, the same hardware. The marble continues through from the fireplace front on to the top of the buffet. It's all unified, and yet it's not boring. It still says this area is the living room and that area is the dining room. Now, the other thing you want to take into consideration when you're doing the long wall is to make sure you don't have 2 matched scenarios in terms of composition. Now, what we mean by that is you have high things here, you want to have low things on the other side of that archway. If both rooms have high things that are symmetrical, well, it looks like you tried to match and missed. There isn't a nice sense of warmth or composition. It says you tried to duplicate the look. Instead, you're better to go with a random shape. So look at the long wall as if it's a piece of canvas and pretend you're drawing a wave in terms of the heights of the things you have in the room. So you have this nice wave configuration. In this room it works because you start tall with the bookcases, come down to the fireplace mantel, up again with the other bookcase, and down again, really low this time, for the top of the buffet. This is a really creative way to combine those 2 spaces with built-ins. But if you don't have an archway, and you like the built-in idea, simply butt the end of the bookcase into the end of the buffet without that little wall in the middle. Now what do you do if you don't want built-ins? Well, you do it with furniture. Just make sure you catch that wave. If you've just moved into a new house, newly constructed house, an apartment, a condo, maybe you've put a room on the back of your old house, one of the toughest challenges you have in decorating is adding the warmth, because you don't have any nooks or crannies to work with, you don't have any old baseboards and old moldings. It's brand new construction, and it's kind of tough to add that country warmth. What you want to do is maybe add a fireplace. Well, you've got a mantle and you've got some hand-painted tiles, and that's okay, but if you don't have a fireplace, add the mantle anyway. Just put it up against the wall and decorate around it. Put some flowers in where the fire usually goes. But another way you can do this is to work with pattern. Pattern in your wallpaper and pattern in the fabric. Now we've added 5 patterns to this room, and that's what gives it its country charm. And here they are. The first pattern is this little stripe just below the oak chair rail. The second pattern is above it. This is sort of an open companion, a floral companion to the same stripe. Now there is a little border here sitting on top of the oak chair rail, and you don't really count that as a pattern because it is a function of the stripe down below. But it is a nice little detail that does add warmth to the room. The next pattern is the sofa fabric. Now this wasn't designed to go with this paper, but it does work with it, and I'll explain why in just a minute. The other patterns are these. This is number 4 and number 5. This is an open, sort of a very overall large print floral. This is the same floral done in a striped version. Now what makes all these go together? It's the color. Their colors are all synonymous. It's the same blues and golds and pinks throughout all of those patterns, and that's one of the magic elements to matching patterns. It's their colors. They have to be somewhat the same. The other magic element is scale, and by that I mean this. They're all opposites. This is a stripe, there's an open floral, here's a plaid, large floral stripe. There are no two that are really the same pattern or the same size. And as long as you keep them far enough apart with the same colors, they'll all work. The other demonstration of this same kind of thing is on the window treatment. There you have a valance and a side panel that are 2 different fabrics but do coordinate. The valance has been done in the overall floral, the large print, and the side panel is done in the striped version of the same floral. Now, if you're working in patterns like this, make sure that the heavier pattern is worked as the side panel. You don't want the heavy pattern up on top as the valance because it feels like the window's going to fall in on you. It's a little top heavy. Now, I know it's difficult to go to a store, fabric store, wallpaper store, and try and pick out patterns that you're going to mix and match yourself. It's pretty scary. But if you follow our simple rules, you can have confidence in the patterns and choices that you do make. One is make sure that you're always working in opposites. You're working in stripes against florals, plaids against geometrics, never the same subject area. You're working in different scale, large print, small print, large plaid, small floral, large floral, small plaid. If you're going to work with color as well, which you need to, make sure your colors are all the same colors in all the patterns that you've chosen. You keep those rules in mind, you can't go wrong. Aren't these wood pieces beautiful? But you know what? They don't look so good against white. Now that's one of the most often made mistakes in coloration in any house is, let's say that you've got a very heavy dark wood kitchen, and then you immediately run out and paint the walls all around the kitchen white. Or let's say that you have a house with a gumwood foyer, lots of old Victorian wood paneling. Gee, it just feels too dark. So you paint all the walls white to lighten it up. It's the wrong thing to do because wood and white, well, I hate to say it, but they don't go. And here's why. When you put wood grain, any species of wood, up against white, it goes flat brown. Now, you'll see 5 different pieces of wood here, and they're all different species. And yes, they differ one from the other, but you don't see the color and the richness and the life in the wood grain. And yet, let's surround wood with color, and you get a completely different impression. For instance, let's say we take this very dark, rich red oak and put it up against burgundy. It looks darker, it looks richer. The life comes out of the wood. And actually, it does look darker, but it's not offensive. It's not heavy because it has a character, it has a depth. After all, wood is a living, breathing thing. It's natural, so it is going to have depth. You see all the different color changes as you look into the grain. Now, if I put that same wood let's say with brilliant red, again, you get a completely different impression. Now look what happens when, let's take this very grayed kind of an oak. This is an oak that has been stained with sort of a gray wash. And if I put it next to gray, look how sophisticated that is. Again, the life comes out of the wood. Now we're going to show you a couple of houses that, well, one was done with a dark green, beautiful woods in the room, and the other was done in white. You see for yourself what a difference white and color can make. This dark walnut cabinet is built into a very large, open, white room that has a lot of windows in it. So there's a lot of natural light, which makes the white even brighter. It also has a very high cathedral ceiling. Now the room is really beautiful. It has a very warm feeling, but the warmth isn't coming from the life in the wood. The wood, as you can see here, in contrast to the white walls, is very dark, very brown. In other words, the wood could just as well have been painted. Now this room, with its color behind the wood, brings the life and the color out of the wood grain of the wood. As you look across the mantel and the built-ins on either side of the fireplace, you see the reds and golds in this beautiful old piece of oak. It's the color in the green that brings the life and the color out of the wood. So if you have a beautiful piece of wood, either in a built-in or even in furniture, surround it with rich color. Gone are the days of stuffing your pillows with pantyhose. How many of you remember that? I do. When you made your own pillows, that's all we had to stuff them with, unless you took apart an old sleeping pillow that was full of feathers. Well, nowadays we've beat that system. We've got all sorts of things to stuff your pillows with. Some are washable, some are not, and some make bumps and some don't, but let's go through them. The first one is relatively inexpensive, and this is a rigid foam pillow form. Actually, I just cut it. It's not really a manufactured foam, and it's a little bit crooked. But that's how most of us start, with a decorative pillow that's really going to be nothing more than a square with a piped edge. But I learned an old upholsterer's secret about filling pillows with forms like this, and you do it with this stuff, which is really, it's quilt batting. It's what you sandwich between the two fabrics, and then you do your quilting. It comes, well, there's the one layer, but what I do is try and do it in 2 layers, and I'm not even going to cut this to show you, but I'm just going to wrap this around the edges to show you what happens to that square pillow. Now you've got the square pillow, but you've got a nice round edge. Because what happens when you don't is if you get a flimsy fabric and you put it there and your piping isn't exactly right on the corner, this edge sticks through the fabric and it looks really, well, it looks a little tacky. It looks very amateur. It doesn't look professional. So what you want to do is just wrap it that way, and that way you get a nice smooth edge, but you still have your square form. Well, that's a really easy trick. Now this stuff, you're going to find a lot. This is Dacron, and it comes all mushed up, sort of like this. You can sort of pull it apart, but it does hang together. The only trouble with this stuff is it's very washable, but it makes bumps in your pillow. So unless you're making a pillow that's very flat, or one that's just going to stay in one position all the time and really isn't going to be used, it's a good craft stuffing, but I wouldn't make a decorative or a fine pillow for your living room, your living room sofa out of it. This stuff is similar. Now this is polyester, again washable, and this reminds me of old cotton batting. Look at this, the way it sort of just pulls apart and pills, and again, great for craft. But unless you're going to stuff a pillow really tight, like really scrunch it down so it's nice and solid like it is in this plastic bag, you're going to have, again, bumps. And I don't know if we want that. This is what you call a pillow form. Now you see it's already in its own casing. And this stuff, well, it says right here, it's stuffed with 100% polyester fiber. That's good, because ordinarily polyester would be washable, but the casing is not. So you got to watch out for that when you're buying your forms. If you're anticipating making a pillow without a zipper in it and tossing the whole pillow in the washing machine, make sure your pillow form itself, the covering on the form, is in fact washable. This one is not, so it would be good for a dry cleaning option, or a pillow where you've got a zipper and the pillow form comes right out of it and the case goes to the dry cleaner. And then we've got something like this, which is my favorite, which is part this. See this in this jar? Down, or down in waterfall. Isn't
that gorgeous stuff? But boy, if you got an allergy, pass on that, at least working with it. You can buy down and waterfowl feathers already pre-packed into a form, and maybe that's what you want to work with. There's nothing like down to give you that cushy, curl up with a good pillow feeling, but it does squish down. Now the perfect answer is my favorite, which is this form. This form is cotton, which means it's easily dry cleaned. You can fluff it up, it wears like iron. Inside is a combination of feathers and a synthetic sort of grunged up filler. And what that does is it means you've got the softness of down. See, I can squish this all up, but then watch what happens to the form. It goes right back to its original shape, and that's what the synthetic filler does combined with the down. Now, that's the perfect professional pillow form. Now, if you don't mind, I got a lot of stuffing to do. You might call this the buttons and bows segment of the show. We're going to show you a little idea that keeps cropping up in old style or Victorian decor. It's the bow tie to a picture. Take a look. Now, there's lots of different ways you can make those bows, but I'm going to show you a real simple way. And actually, it's not a tied bow. Get yourself a length of ribbon and make sure you get really good quality ribbon, because the ribbon is going to be a beautiful part of that picture, the whole presentation, so you don't want to skimp. Good quality ribbon, and moires or satins are always really elegant. Now, take your piece of ribbon and cut off, in this case, my bow is going to be twice that width. So that's one tail, that's one little loop of the bow. So I cut a piece that's twice the width of the loop, okay, and then I cut 3 of them exactly the same length. There's 2, and here's 3. Now, rather than sew it for you, because that's kind of hard for you to see, I'm going to pin this on a bulletin board, on a little cork board, to give you the idea of how the bow actually gets sewn together. Now, take your first loop. I'm just going to pin this in place. And you actually create the loop, and then shear it up. Not too much, because you don't want the bow flopping all over the place, but you want a little bit of shearing, a little fullness in the very center of that bow, like that. We'll just pin this up here so it stays in place. Now, a true Victorian bow to top a picture is quite rigid. It's not a floppy kind of bow. Okay, we're going to do the same thing to this one. And once you shear these, you can sew them. And this is not a machine job. You can actually sit in front of television and do this by hand. Just pin that little one in place so to not mind all the pins here, and we'll just tuck that into position. And now the next piece, the same thing's going to happen, only this time it's going up here to the top. And you shear it in and actually pin this into the same position. Now, what keeps that top loop up on the wall? Well, you have to either tape it to the wall or get inside here and put a little thumbtack right into the wall itself, just behind the loop of the bow to keep it in position. So it's kind of, it's not the bow that's actually hanging the picture. It's just a decorative attachment. Your picture actually does still hang with the picture hook. And then your tail comes down. You sew this into place, and what you can do is create a little loop like this right over the top of it. You fold your ribbon in half like that, let it flop over, and then because I've got all these pins in place, it's kind of hard for me to tuck this in, but I think you get the idea. But that just actually flops over and creates a bit of a tailored touch. This just hangs down into position. And then your picture hangs right in the middle with the tails coming past the picture down below it. There's a lot to learn in this video. We've covered a lot of ground.
Now, you're not going to understand or be able to implement all those ideas all at once. Use this video like a textbook. Keep it on your shelf. And then when you go to redecorate a room, take the hour, pull out the video, and review all those design basics once again. It'll give you the confidence you need to make your ideas work.